This afternoon I'm very pleased to welcome John Clewarth.
Thank you very much.
Who writes children's books. He writes children's fantasy books. I have to admit I've only read one of them. Not quite my genre.
Still at the back there.
And my children are too old to read these books. They are grown-ups. But however, we're very pleased to have John here this afternoon.
Lovely to be here, thank you.
And I'm going to let John tell you about the style he writes, the genre he writes, and why he writes for children.
So welcome everybody. My genre is children and young adults, well, the age range that I write for currently. It's a little bit more later about something else. And the genre is probably best described as spooky but fun. And the reason I write this kind of stuff is it's the stuff I used to love to read when I was a youngster. If I was lucky on a Friday evening, I don't know if any of you remember Appointment with Fear. It used to be on. If I was allowed to, if I'd been good, I could stay up and watch it. And it was all the old Hammer cliche stuff, but it was fun, and it was joyously told, and it was a little bit going up to the top of the roller coaster, and then suddenly when you get to the top, that moment when you zip back down, and that's what I aim to provide for the readers that I'm writing for. So it's kind of giving them the opportunity to come along, enjoy a few thrills, a few scares along the way, and this is something that's really, really important to me as an ex-teacher, sorry kids, for 30 years and more, is that we have moral responsibility and moral tone, whatever we write for children, because we're the custodians of children's literature. We don't own it, we're just here to look after it. And if we can produce something new and something fresh, then that's what I aim to do as well. And they've been generally well received. And there's nothing too terrifying going in them. It's just a kind of a fun but scary, and that's the important thing to remember. So writing for children, why I write for children is, well, a lot of experience as a teacher. When I was a child, I remember going to the library for the first time, and they weren't like this. There were long, great big shelves, polished floors. I remember going with my mum, and my hand was up there, so that's how small I was. And can you hear me okay? I just loved the smell of it. There's floor polish and old paper, and I just love that smell even now because it reminds me of the wonderful stories. In those days, there wasn't a great lot on the children's market, so I graduated to quite grown-up stuff pretty quickly. And that sort of powered my reading on as well. Now, children's market, young adults market is very, very competitive, very full market as well, so you have to try to produce something that's different, something that's fresh, and something that children engage with. And crucially, something that they see themselves in. So in every book I write, I try to make sure that children can see themselves reflected in that, and their lives reflected in that, in a fantasy setting. So that's a broad overview of why I write that for this market and the genre that I write for.
So was it from being a teacher that you wanted to write these books? Was it because you'd seen a gap in the market from teaching, or?
A bit of both, really, Kate. Yeah. So as a teacher, you've got a captive audience every day. And of course I've read lots of stories to them. And I used to occasionally tell them stories, and they enjoyed listening to the stories. And so I started to write some of them down, did short stories. They enjoyed those. And when the first one came out, they were absolutely abuzz with it. They were just, our teacher's written a book. It's amazing. I self-published it. It got to the final of the 2013 People's Book Prize, which I was really pleased about. So I was up against some really unknown people like Neil Gaiman and David Williams. Who's he? I didn't win, but I think it was maybe Armand, the Skellig guy. They're brilliant authors, and just to be mentioned in that group of names, it was something really, really special. So, and it was good as well because I could watch how children operate every day, and the little sound bites, how they speak. If you get the voice wrong, you can't make them sound like mini adults, have their own way of talking, and that changes such a lot. So I was able to watch them, observe them in their interactions, and sometimes almost, pick up a character and drop them into a book, change the names and change a few things over. But yeah, I would say, oh no, that's based on. And so yeah, you could use that as a real inspiration for a lot of the ideas. And the ideas themselves, well, anybody that's into writing and books, and I guess a lot of people here are interested in that kind of thing, they're just anywhere and everywhere. I could look around this room now and find a story in every one of you, and a different scenario, and something you've heard in the news, or a song that you've heard, or a dream even. Like I've written stories based on a dream. Very few and far between. I wish I dreamed more often. Must eat more cheese.
But obviously writing for children is different from writing for adults, obviously it is.
Yes.
So are there language constraints? Are there challenges around writing for children, and how easy did you find that?
Yeah.
What were the problems that it gave you in terms of getting everything right?
Yeah, good question, Kate. So basically, writing, one common myth is that if you want to be a writer, go and write a children's book because it's easy. It's not. It's probably the hardest market to write for, because a child will shut the book after the first page, and if they don't like it, that's it. You're gone with your history. Being a teacher helped me a lot in how to get the language right, but also when I mentioned earlier about the moral tone that's in there. So if I write for young adults, some of the material will be a little bit darker, a little bit edgier than for a younger market. I've got a book coming out in October which is age 7+, and I've written for children and young adults as well. I mean, Demons in the Dark, it's at the back there. That one's anything from sort of age 10 up to adults having a good time with it as well. But two things really that I avoid pretty much, completely, is any language. So I don't use foul language in children's stories, and there's nothing stronger than a kiss. These are always little borderlines that you have to think about. What are they ready for? And kids would probably disagree and say, oh yeah, go on, I'm ready for that. But actually, we come back to the custodian part of it. We've got to be the ones that say, right, okay, that's what we want to expose that market to. Whilst you're doing that though, rather than problems, you get challenges. So you think to yourself, well, how am I going to reflect kids of today in the stuff that I'm writing? How are you going to reflect that? So regardless of, sexual orientation, colour, creed, geographical location, rich or poor, every child should see themselves reflected in a story somehow. And I'm always careful to try and twist it round a little bit, so it's not your stereotypical, leading male. There are lots of strong female characters in my books that, come out full Beyonce, if you know what that means. Apparently it's a thing. And it's knowing where the boundaries lie. I'm looking at writing an adult novel very shortly, once I've cleared a couple of big projects that I'm working on at the minute. More about those later. And that will be a crime novel. So obviously, the darker side will be able to come out with probably, take the bumpers off, if you like. So you've got to think about, it's making sure that children come away having had a good time, having enjoyed it, having enjoyed being scared, because children do love being scared. But it's like, Doctor Who, for example. It scares children. There's some bit of stuff on there that I hide behind the sofa on even now. But you've kind of got to be able to do that and know when to pull back, and know when to take, and always take them by the hand. And so that, that's as far as we're going to go on this. And the good guys tend to win in my stories, without too many spoilers there. not sure about the crime one. They might not win in that one. I might let the bad guys have a go. Yeah, so I tend to think of it as challenges, but and I would also say, if you wanted to do that kind of thing, surround yourself with like-minded people, join groups, join lots of different writing groups, talk to lots of different writers, and don't just write it and publish it, because I've had such a lot of good advice. That doesn't work, John. That didn't work. That joke fell flat. You know, it's lagging there. It's dragging a bit. So, you know, you need to pace it up, or you need to steady it down, have a bit of downtime. So yeah, lots of feedback. So whatever's written first often doesn't look anything like what's written the finished product.
Yes, and I'm thinking again. And as I said, I have only read one of the books. But I'm thinking again about the level of language, the words that you use, the way that you express things. Is this something that you feel that as being a teacher, you've got that knowledge and you've learnt about how to explain something that's not too complicated? Or I felt that when I read Firestorm Rising, and there were things in there when they're in the churchyard. The way that things are expressed, it was a way that I thought you wouldn't do that in an adult book. So how easy is that to do, and does that come from your being a teacher?
Yeah, absolutely. I think being a teacher, it's not an essential of being a children's author, but again, just sharing those ideas around and sort of, getting feedback from children. That was one of the good things. I was able to get feedback from children. And I suppose being a teacher, the way that I could explain things when, 30 hands shot up in the air and said, "I don't get that, sir," and you've got to find another way of expressing it. But one thing that's really important is, and this is one of the best pieces of advice that I ever had when I was starting to get into it, and I emailed a few big names, what would you do, and will you look at this first chapter? And a few of them came back and said, yeah, I like that first chapter, keep going, it's great, but never talk down to children. So that comes in your language choices as well. There's nothing wrong in putting articulate language into children's books, but you've got to draw the line as well between being too wordy and purple prosy and making sure that your language is economical, pacey, and tells the story, because the story is at the centre of it all. So one informs the other.
Yes. The other thing that I noticed, and as I say, it was Firestorm Rising that I read. The three children in there all have very different relationships with their parents, that, as all children do. Yeah. Their home life was different. Was that a definite choice to try and express to children how things can be different? Why did you do it the way you did it?
It was partly because of that, and it was partly a plot tool as well, because I needed a child that had a playroom that overlooked an attic and didn't get supervised too much. And this is my sassy girl character. She doesn't get supervised very much. And in the sequel, which is called The Teardrop of Ice, it's about a travelling show on a diamond. You kind of find out more about her parents. And so it definitely is a deliberate choice, though, to, as I say, making sure that children are reflected. It comes down to disability as well. So, there are children that feature children in wheelchairs, or children that maybe are neurodiverse. And it's really, really important that they can see themselves in that as well. So in Firestorm Rising, which was my first one actually, so I've written in 2012, but it took me about 5 years to write it. Have we got any teachers in here? Or related to teachers, or know any teachers? You'll know that teachers don't get evenings and weekends. So I kind of had to try and cram as much as I could in the morning or at lunchtime or something like that. And so it took 5 years to write. But I wanted to, even then, when I was kind of cutting my teeth and learning how to do it, we've got sort of different nationalities, different backgrounds, different parental heritages, all contributing to the story in a meaningful way. And so that is a deliberate choice. And it's something I've continued throughout all the books as well. so that a girl can pick this up and say, oh, is it for boys? No. Is boy thinking, is it for girls? No, it's for everybody. Enjoy it if you like a good story, because again, I'll always come back to that. The story is the key thing. So the story is the thing that everything hinges on. And you can forget being politically correct. If you haven't got a story, there's nothing there to read. You can say, I'm going to put that person in, that person, that person. If there's not a plot, you're lost. So the story has to be first. Does that answer that? I do tend to ramble.
That's all right, don't worry. Yes, and I can attest to the fact that it is a good story. There's no doubt it's a good story. Just moving on a little bit then, you say it took you a long time to write that first one.
Yeah.
Do you now write regularly, every day? Are you up at whatever time in the morning and writing for 2 hours, or how do you do it?
I prefer to write on a morning because my brain turns to mush in the evenings. I'm 29 now, and so 9 o'clock's my new midnight. It's like, cows production. So I write better in the morning, so I like to get up early and write. I have got the luxury now of being able to write pretty much every day. Weekends I do ceremony officer, so I marry people on weekends, conduct weddings. That's not every weekend, but it's most weekends. So weekends tend to get I tend to not write too much, or I might do a little bit of editing. But I do like to write on a regular basis, and it's so much better for keeping the thread of a story going. If you're writing something and you leave it for a while and come back to it, you've got to get the scent back. Otherwise, the continuity, it shows. It's like a cut and shut job. So you've got to keep at it and keep going every day. I do like the idea now that I'm nearly a full-time writer, and lovely events like this and connecting with people like yourselves. And I was lucky to be able to do an event here this morning at the library with a booked out event with children ranged from 3 up until 11, and they all gave lovely feedback on it and met some lovely new people. This is what it's all about. It's about connecting. If there's no readers, then there's no writer. And it's getting books into your hands and into the hands of the children that you know, and spreading the word that books are fun, because there are so many distractions now. And as a teacher, trust me, I know, Instagram, all the others, Facebook, that's quite old now, isn't it, Facebook?
It is.
But it tends to be everything's so instant. But to lose yourself in a book is completely magical, and you just can't replicate that anywhere. And even I've got a Kindle, but I love the feel of a paperback in my hand. That's just the real joy of it, curling up and disappearing into a whole new world. I think I've veered off again, Kate.
That's all right. I do agree with you. There is nothing like having a book in your hands and just turning the pages. It is magic. It is. So to move from the writing of the books, then, what about publishing? Getting a publisher? Yeah. How easy was it to do that?
Really difficult to get a publisher, and even more difficult to get an agent. So I'm unagented. I'm part of a few different groups. And I'll just mention them all. But the Promoting Yorkshire Authors is a big Yorkshire group, which is like-minded, independently published authors. Now, independent publishing can mean self-published. It can include that, or it can include independent publishers that don't require an agent, but see something in your work and think, I like that. I'd like to publish that. So my first one was self-published, as was my second and my third. And then I discovered independent publishing house quite by accident. Started talking online. It's called House of Loki. And the publisher is based in the Netherlands, but is from Liverpool originally. Think Paul O'Grady with a Dutch accent, or maybe not so much of a Dutch accent. I'm sure he won't mind me saying that. He's got a great sense of humour. And then I got to meet a lot of other authors as well on the same lines, and we started putting anthologies together. So we've built up from we've got quite a few titles in the pipeline, ready to come out shortly. So watch out for House of Loki. It's an up-and-coming independent publisher, and I think it's going to be big. The other one I discovered is called Red Cape Publishing, which is It does a lot of adult horror, but it's also got a children's arm. And I said, well, I don't write adult horror per se, but I've got a really cracking children's one called Jack Devlin and the Roman Curse. And he said, well, send it along. And nothing happens quick in publishing. So about 6 months later, I got this email back. Oh, I love it, John. Can we, would like to publish it, please? And so I signed a publishing contract with that one. And they've got another one coming out with them. And we'll talk about that one later, but that's coming out in Halloween. Halloween is a lovely time of year for me. It's like my Christmas Halloween. And I've got that one coming out with them. And I've got an independent, I've got self-publishing, a younger one, which is based in ancient Greece, and it's kind of a spin-off of that for 7 years and up. So, I've tried agents. You end up with what's called a slush pile. So, you send your idea off. It ends up either at the top or at the bottom or in the middle of this massive great pile. And sometimes your email will get read, and sometimes the first chapter will get read, sometimes it won't. I've had some lovely feedback. We like it, but it doesn't quite fit. And they only have a limited number of authors on their books. So I'm unagented. I like that simply because I can put books in your hands quicker than if I had an agent. I'm going to write an adult crime novel. I know a lot of good crime writers out there that are writing independently. They can put 3 or 4 books out in a year. That doesn't mean they've been rushed. It doesn't mean they've been, slapped out without any thought. What it means is they don't have to wait for the 18-month turnaround that agents and publishers have, and it really is that long between books. So even published authors with agents, they make their money from visits or book fairs, big shows, really not so much from the actual sale of the books, unless you're J.K. Rowling or something like that. Yeah, I've tried a little bit of everything. Key thing is I've not lost the flavour for it. I said, well, what's the best advice that you can give? 1, don't talk down to children, and 2, never ever say die, never give in. Keep going. Not every idea works. I've got folders of ideas that just don't really work, but I never waste anything, so I might come back to it. But the ones that do work, they become books, and it's quite a magical thing having that in your hands. Oh, I made that, and somebody read it and liked it. I mean, Kate has read Firestorm Rising. She's now, for homework, she's going to read all the other ones, aren't you, Kate?
Oh, yeah. I might just, but I was just thinking, grandchildren, how might like 1 or 2 of those? So I'm going to have a look, definitely.
Perfect.
But what about your marketing? Marketing is boring, isn't it? I've spent ages marketing. I've got 2 books. I've spent ages marketing.
Yeah.
It's lovely if somebody does it for you.
Oh, absolutely.
How do you do it? How do you get out there?
Well, through events like this, this is the key thing. Again, meeting people face to face. We can have a chat afterwards. You can have a browse at the books, by all means. Do feel free to stick around and ask questions after. It's very difficult. You can spend a lot of money on marketing. We had a crime writer, an independently published crime writer. He was agented before. And he stopped going with the agent because he wanted to put more work out there. And he said you can spend an awful lot of money on marketing, and it doesn't really get you very far. So I'm not an expert at that at all. My marketing is more by accident than anything else. I've got a Facebook profile, an author page. I've got a website that I put things out on. I've got an Instagram page. And Facebook will, would you like to boost this for, an extra 20 or 30 quid? I'd rather it was organic. So, you're kind of meeting people. So, oh, I know, John, you might like that. You might like that book. And let it grow organically. So marketing is a very difficult one. And, I think there are experts that you can invite to speak to you. I know we're promoting Yorkshire authors. We've had experts come to us on that, but it's something that's very much an in-progress thing. If you're agented, then the marketing just takes place for you because of Bloomsbury, for example, or Swann. They're just big machines and they're everywhere. So that's why you see in the supermarkets lots of David Walliams, rather than lots of John Clewarth or lots of Lindsay, who's another author here in the front row. Because it's the kind of stuff that is mass market, and they do the work for you. What I love doing is getting out there and getting involved. And to do something like this is just brilliant. And working with children like I did this morning, it's great. So you're not just sat in a little room typing away all the time. You come out, shave your beard off, and then you're back out in the land of the living, meeting real people. So yeah, marketing's tricky. It's doable, but I think it's a learning progress and the bigger your budget becomes, the more you sell, the more you can market. So it's like a snowball effect.
Yes, that's true. Now you keep hinting about something different coming out in October. Tell us a little bit about that and about why you're going to have a go at something else.
Yeah, so and it sounds really cliche to say keep it fresh. But I do like to challenge myself and not get too much into a comfort zone. And sometimes you find that authors will just put something out, that last one's so top, I'll put a bit more of it and a bit more of it. It's not saying anything new. So I like to explore new ideas. So this coming out in Halloween, early October hopefully, from Red Cake Publishing, is a Christmas anthology. But of course, me being me, it's spooky. It's called 13 Tales of Tinselly Terror. Can I hear a ooh? Oh, that would... Yeah, 13 Tales of Tinselly Terror. It'll be out for Christmas, but it'll also be out for Halloween. Short, spooky stories for children. Some of them are very silly, like The Curse of the Weresprout. We've heard of werewolves. Have you ever heard of a weresprout? Well, children hate sprouts, on the whole. So I thought, let's make one into a monster. So, you get somebody turned into a weresprout. There's 13 stories of that. I am self-publishing because I found a super artist, which Promoting Yorkshire's put me in touch with. And I've got a good editor on it as well. And that's age 7 and up. And that's going to be called The Incredible Quest of Charlie Oddie. And basically it is a young lad and his friends who discover things from way back in ancient Greek times coming to reality and entering into their world. So there's a bit of history in there as well. I've also got a top secret one that only Callum from House of Loki knows about, so I can't say too much about it, but it will be a young adult, and that will be a young adult for the adult market, but for the young adult market as well. So you're looking at anything 14 years up, which is pretty spooky. One about a witch and who becomes released to an unsuspecting group of people, and I really enjoyed writing that. So that's very much in the early editing stage. And the other one, Kate, is the crime novel, which is, I love watching crime on TV. It seems to be very popular these days as well. And I love having a go and see if I can guess who's done it. I've never managed to guess who did it. So I'm going to see if I can plot one, put it together, and try and trick the readers with that. But one little tip that I got on writing crime is write 2. Because if your first one goes down well, they'll want the second one pretty quickly. So I'm going to write a couple of crime novels. Keeps me busy, and I just fall in love with it as well.
Well, certainly crime does seem to be fairly popular, and I mean it's just...
Is it wrong to say? Crime pays.
Crime pays. Well, yeah, it seems to do. Yes, it's only a month ago since we did the 3 days here with crime
absolutely,
writers.
Yeah,
we look forward to. Well, we're going to say so. We'll put your name on the list for next year, shall we?
That's brilliant. Thank you.
So I've asked you lots of questions, but there might be things that you want to tell me about your writing, or that you want to say that I've not given you a chance. So tell us something we don't know.
Something you don't know?
Yeah.
I've got double jointed thumbs.
Well,
how's that? I mean, that's just, isn't it? It's something else. I don't think I've featured that in a story yet. But I suppose I've been, a bit of backstory, I've been writing stories ever since I could pick up a pencil. That was my thing. I always came out pretty much near, teacher's pet when it came to writing stories. Give me a bit of maths to sort out, like, no, can't do that. No sense of direction, but I've got a way with words. And I loved listening to stories, so I learned to read at my mum's knee. She took me to the library, as I say. I'd take out as many books as I could. I got my own card. You could take out 10 books at one go. It's like heaven. So I'd be reading a lot. And then I started writing stories as well. So I'd write plays at school. I played Princess Rosebud in one of the plays at school, which was brilliant. I loved doing it because none of the other lads would do it. So I said, well, I'll have a go. I'll be Princess Rosebud. And I put on a really silly voice. Would you like to hear the silly voice? Yes. Ooh, I'm Princess Rosebud. I mean, the vocal cords have slackened a bit since then, but it was of that ilk. And wig on and everything. And I loved writing them. I loved taking part in dramas. So anything sort of, I suppose really I'm a dreamer. I've always been a bit of a dreamer. And you kind of, when you write books, you get to daydream with an end result. You get to put your ideas down on paper. And I'd advise anybody, if you want to be a writer, to carry a notebook around with you, or a little app on your phone where you can just speak things in, because something will come to you at the most inopportune time. You just say, I just need to jot that down. I do it in the middle of the night, so I wake up in the middle of the night and jot things down. I suppose what I'm trying to say is to understand what's going on in a writer's head. Imagine a great blue whale swimming through the ocean with its mouth wide open, taking in all the is it krill they call it? I think it's krill. That basically they consume it all. That's what writers do. We're consuming all the time. And some of it gets filtered out and some of it just sticks around. And it's those ideas that stick around that I like to stay with. One difficulty is you get so many ideas, you can only write so many of them at one go. You've got to kind of stick. So, stick to one idea. So what I've got now, before I start writing the crime, I want to tidy off everything else. And I've got some anthologies that I'm looking towards having a little bit of fun with as well in the very near future. So it's busy, but great fun. The thing to remember, nobody is born a writer. You don't suddenly buy an ivory tower and go up and write it. Everybody's a writer. Anybody that can just put something down on paper. Value your own words. Somebody's not going to like it, somebody's going to like it. You just have to become thick-skinned, deal with rejection quite a lot, and celebrate the little wins. And whatever you do, just keep going, because there's somebody out there looking for your next story, for your next book. And that's really why I keep it going.
Good for you. Has anybody in the audience got a question for John? Anything you'd like to ask him? Yes?
I just wanted to ask about illustrations, which are obviously important in books for young people.
Yeah.
And have you found your own illustrator? Have you ever tried illustrating? How does it work when you're independent?
That's a really good question. So the question about illustrations. The books that I've got at the back there, they're all kind of suitable for 8 and upwards. They're not illustrated apart from the covers. But I do like to keep fairly short chapters with cliffhangers and a nice pacey story. For the what we call lower middle grade, which is actually roughly, say, your stronger 6-year-old readers, but 7 to 9-year-olds, through a colleague in promoting Yorkshire authors, I said, I like the way you've got your internal illustrations and your cover art. So the cover art and internal illustrations are being done by this gentleman for me, and he's really good. I love the look of his work, and he's in progress now. He's shown me some early rough cuts, and they look great. The House of Loki one, we have a kind of I think we've kind of got an in-house illustrator. He might not know this. But he's put a book out called The Bonds, which is Philip Pullman requested a copy of it, which is really, really nice. He's a great artist and a great author, and he does our covers on the whole as well, so may well get him involved at some point. So again, it comes back to networking. Don't just plump for the first one that you come to. There are lots of people out there that will charge you a lot of money for illustrations. You might not be happy with them. I was lucky with the guy that's doing my... I wish I could remember his name, but it's one of those things, spur of the moment. But he'd done the work for my colleague's book, and I contacted him, and his rates were really reasonable as well. So, and also with that goes hand in hand with that, is pay for a good editor. You can put your own stuff out, but either run it by X number of people first of all, but if you can find a good editor that's reasonably priced, and you can pay a lot of money for that, you look at it and you think, yeah, I'd missed that. That repetitive word or that phrase didn't quite sound, it sounded clunky. So, trying to keep it affordable. But again, everybody's on budgets. So, the ones, the first three, Demons in the Dark, The Teardrop of Ice and Firestorm Rising, had trusted writer friends and colleagues who edited those along with me. And they are very clean now, and the way that I want them. The Jack Devlin one, Red Cape, have got their own editor in-house as well, so that's all done for us as well. So, I think it's very much a process of find who you like. When my illustrator sent me these latest ones, he says, what do you think? And I instantly loved it, because there's a dog in it, and it just looks brilliant. It didn't look like a dog, it looks like a cartoon dog. But that's, it's that cartoon children's literature, internal illustrations have, so going for one every chapter in that one. So watch out for that one. I'm aiming to get that one out around about early October as well.
So how did you get covers for those early books when you were setting out? Because the covers must be so important.
Absolutely, they are, yeah. So the first three, I was lucky enough to go, there's a guy called David Jousey, and he's an ex-university friend of mine. Well, he's a ongoing friend, but we went to teacher training college together. He was on the creative arts course. And so I said, look, I'm putting this book out. I have no idea how to do a cover. I could have taken something off the internet, and it probably wouldn't have looked quite right. And he did those in oils, first of all, and sort of really spent a heck of a long time on it and didn't charge me anywhere near as much as maybe a friend wouldn't have. So the first three are courtesy of Mr. David Jousey, and then the Jack Devlin one, which is Red Cape. They offer publishing services as well, but I got that for free because their own design team created the cover. I absolutely love it. I love all of them, but you're absolutely right. That's what draws you in the first place. Sorry, that's what draws you to a book in the first place. Certainly, a child. What's that? It's got a Roman helmet on it. It's got colourful feathers. What could be inside it, and then get a good blurb on the back. And the wraparound cover. So that's all part of the process. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else got a burning question? Yes.
Do you consider the point you made about having children in the book for children to identify with, is that essential? And where I'm coming from, I'm just thinking of my own childhood reading, fictional reading outside of literature in school is, as I'm even permissible to say now, it's Biggles, which is a child for his own, and I was fine with that. Any children brought into it would probably have been precocious, and I think, objected to them or been jealous of them for being in a story. I don't know. So basically, for me, as a child, I was happy with stories about adults.
Oh, absolutely. So was I. As I'm writing for the children's market, which again now is opening up stories, genres that weren't available. So the stuff, the kind of things that I like to watch, Appointment with Fear, or the kind of things that I like to read, the Pan books of horror stories, they were great. We used to buy one and sort of pass them around the class in high school, you know, oh, have you read that one, have you read that one? And they were brilliant, but they weren't marketed for children, and there weren't a lot of children in them. But I think the key reason is that it was taken as read that children should be seen and not heard back in the day. So there wasn't a lot of choice, although I loved the library, there wasn't a lot of choice available. But a lot of the literature that I had a good time with growing up was what you might describe as adult literature. And I still love that now. But I also love a lot of the children's books that are out there.
So are you saying that Biggles was for adults?
I've not read Biggles. No. I know, it's one that's not been part of my sort of back catalogue. Would you recommend?
I would, yes.
And would you say that Biggles is for adults? Or for children?
I assumed it was for a child market. I mean, otherwise I wouldn't have had it. But yeah, I don't see why adults shouldn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
You're right, yes. I suppose
Well,
it crosses over now and again.
yeah, I mean, there's some lovely side, a good time with Just William, for example. You know, the naughty schoolboy. It dates a little bit now when you sort of look, if you put that in front of a modern market, you'd really have to bring it up to scratch to get it meaningful in a way to children today. But I always say there's no reason why children and adults can't have a good time reading whatever the heck they like. You know, it's parental guidance from us as the custodians, the children's writers, making sure that we pull the stops or push the stops back in when we think that's enough. You know, we don't want to go too much further down that line. But you're still discussing the same kind of ideas. You know, children come across broken families, unfortunately. You know, children come across bullying at school. They come across racism. We come across that as adults. And it's being able to see, you know, getting children to see that actually there are ways of dealing with that. You're not the only one. It can be reflected. Whilst we're putting this in a fantasy world, we're actually opening that up to discussion. And I think that's so important. So important.
Yes, the lady at the back.
Thank you. You made a reference to ancient Greece, and then you mentioned the Roman planet. So I'm curious, have you written about in a historical context, or do you think you might do in the future?
Not necessarily a historical book, but I try to do my research as well as I can. So the one that's coming up, the next release, or one of the next releases, is the ancient Greece one. And I taught that at school, and I always had the kids love the ancient myths. And a lot of authors have tapped into that in different ways. You know, Maz Evans with Who Let the Gods Out is a classic one. The Lightning, Percy Jackson, Lightning, yeah. And people like that. So I've kept mine different from that, and I've based it on something entirely different, I hope. I won't say too much about it at the moment for spoilers. But I looked at it and thought, right, okay, so is that actually is that right? Does this... One thing I can say, it concerns a battle between darkness and light. And they actually had gods for everything. You know, they had gods of the darkness and they had gods of the light. And how can we bring the essence of that into characters that are seemingly, you know, in responsible care for children, and then sort of bring out how do the children fit into this? And what strengths have they got? And how can they, you know... So you've got to get your research right. And each one of them represents a different aspect of Greek heroism, if you like. And again, it's boys and girls. With the Roman curse one, I live in Pontefract, which is, well, Ackworth, which is just outside Pontefract. And it's in Castleford, which is a nearby town. There's underground, there's a Roman baths that it's been paved over, as so many places are these days. And you have to go to York to find, you know, to the Roman stuff. And they put a roundabout on it. And so my story focuses on the idea that before they built the roundabout, the main character's granddad was an archaeologist, and he unearthed something called a Roman curse tablet. And basically a Roman curse tablet is like it's the Roman equivalent of sending a really strong email to somebody, you know, or stalking online or something. I want this to happen to you. And I didn't go into what the Romans wrote on them because that wouldn't be appropriate for children. But I thought, well, what if they cursed, whoever unearthed it and their line? And so begins the story of the Roman curse. And we've got a great opportunity to write some really good monsters and things in there. But everything is as authentic as I can get it, because readers will pick up and say, well, that never did happen. You got that wrong. So to try and get that bit right is really important. You're welcome.
Anyone else?
What was that? How do you keep so young and good looking, John? Who said that? Who said that? It's just cream and workout.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much. That has been fascinating, and I'm sure everybody would like to thank John in the usual way.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming, everybody. Thank you. It's been brilliant to see you all. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for your questions at the end. If you've got any questions after, do feel free to come along and have a chat. If you'd like to purchase any of my books, this isn't what this is about, but if you're interested, there are copies at the back, and I've got spares as well. Otherwise, have a lovely day. Enjoy what's left of the sunshine, because I think it's going to break down pretty soon. All the best, everybody.
Thank you for coming.